We're previewing the LA Clippers. Of course, there's weird stuff happening with this team because why wouldn't there be? Michael Bolton.
Thanks, Josh. It's Michael Bolton here, and it's time for another episode of the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Let's get to it.
Let's get to it, indeed.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NBA fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to the Locked On Fantasy Basketball Podcast brought to you by Basketball Monster. My name is Josh Lloyd and I'm on the search for the last Pizza Hut all-you-can-eat. I'm also the lead fantasy analyst at basketballmonster.com and you can find me on Twitter as always at redrock_bball, on TikTok at redrock_bball, and on Instagram at Locked On Fantasy Basketball. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet and you get started with $200 in bonus bets, guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Thank you also for making Locked On Fantasy Basketball your first listen every day. We are free. We are available on all platforms. Yeah. All right. We're here to talk about the LA Clippers with some big news that dropped yesterday. A quick reminder again, Locked On Fantasy Basketball Bowl. Check your invites over the next few days. Second round will go out. If you haven't accepted the first round, it will get retracted. Just got to get around to going through and doing all those, and then on the track for most drafts to start next week. Head-to-head version, points version, roto version, $50 entry fee, slow draft, so you don't have to worry about the draft time. It's slow. And that's, you know how that works. Entries are down below in the description and in the show notes for the audio version. We are here to talk about the Clippers, a team that, of course, made the decision despite going into a new arena, that's the word, into a dome. They decided they weren't going to bring back Paul George, and we all thought that was somewhat curious at the time. Maybe some of the reasons of not doing that are becoming a little bit clearer with some of the other news that's come out as I beat around the bush to basically just tell you that, yeah, Kawhi's cooked, man. And I already had this idea. We'll go through it in a second, but you know that I was already out on two guys, and that was Kawhi Leonard and Joel Embiid. Repeat meniscus injuries, repeat ligament injuries in the exact same knee repeatedly over many years is reason for me to be out. And then, of course, Kawhi had the absence at the end of the season. He had the weird situation at the Olympics, and now the reports come out of a knee surgery, again, another sort of procedure that has him not participating in work at camp, just strengthening stuff, and maybe not ready for the beginning of the season. And the way that this team and this player has lied to us through the years with injuries, nothing makes sense. It makes no sense to me that he would show up at Team USA and they would basically cut him, and then the Clippers would come out and cry and be like, I don't know why they would do that. He's totally fit and healthy and he's ready to go, and he was ready to go out in there and dominate. And then 2 months later, oh yeah, actually he might not be ready for camp or the start of the season because of a knee procedure that he had. Okay, so when did that knee procedure happen? After he was totally healthy at Olympic camp? Is that when it happened? And now he's got swelling? Did he have the procedure before Olympic camp and he went there and didn't look right? And now the swelling is still a problem? They'll never tell us. They'll lie to us all the time, but there are very clear lies there. And the next lie is that, yeah, he might be ready for opening of the season. He won't be. I don't know what procedure he had. They'll never tell us. They said, I think he took a piss with chili on his hand, so he's out for a game, and then it was a torn ACL. They lie about everything with this guy. And I don't know if it's them, or if it's him, or if it's a combination, or what it is. It is constant lies about the status of him. So, repeated knee injuries, meniscus, same knee, I am out. And I've said that all the way through, and this further backs up my reasoning or my thoughts on that. In saying that, the projected starting five includes Kawhi Leonard for the Clippers, but it won't. He will not be there opening night. I feel 98% confident that he will not play opening night. He might. I don't know, obviously, but I'm just putting 2 and 2 together. For the Clippers, 2 and 2 equals 69. For 2 and 2 for me, it equals 4. They're lying. They have been lying. The Olympic story does not add up. Their projected starting five is James Harden, Terrence Mann, Kawhi Leonard, Derek Jones Jr., and Ivica Zubac. That is what I am projecting. But the expectation is that Kawhi will not be there opening night. I would think it comes down to two people to potentially replace Kawhi in that starting group, Nicola Batum or Norman Powell. And I think it probably ends up being Powell. Otherwise, you have absolutely nobody to have any usage at all in that starting group. I guess you could say that they will put Kevin Porter Jr. into that starting lineup, but old mate has been out of the league for a year, and I wouldn't be shocked if he's honestly suspended for 10 games to begin the season. Although no news on that has come down. So I would think if Kawhi is out, it would have to be Norm Powell that jumps into that starting group. Powell's not going to do much more than score, but I really don't see how you could have Terrence Mann, Batum, Jones, and Zubac as the other guys around Harden who's going to run at 50 usage in that group. He won't, but he'd have to. It's, a weird spot as per usual. Let's take a look at some undervalued players on this team, which actually exists. So there are players who I think are undervalued on the Clippers squad at the moment, and one of them is the guy that is probably going to be the major focus, and he's going to go under the lens later on in the show. We are talking about the one and only James Harden, who in a draft-only league about 3 weeks ago, I picked at 13. I picked him on the turn at 13, and there was some criticism of that pick. I will guarantee you right now that James Harden will go at the turn in most drafts that you see from here on out. It's not to say that my pick was awesome at the time. I thought it was good. I thought it made sense. But with the extra news on Kawhi, which again, that will change people's opinion on Kawhi a lot. It doesn't change my opinion on Kawhi that much because I already had that opinion. Hence why I was already investing heavily into James Harden. Harden's ADP on ESPN is 28. It's already ESPN ADPs. Throw another thing out there that I do not believe ESPN about. Their ADPs change by like 12 spots in 3 days, which is almost impossible unless there is manipulation of that data. But his ADP has come into 28. His rank on points leagues is 25, and the ADP is 28 there as well. It was like he was originally in the 40s on ESPN like a week or two ago. In fact, I think I've got the data. I might go and have a look at that. One sec. All right, let me give you the data on Harden's ADP on ESPN, because I have it. I'll put his little stats up for you to have a look at. But James Harden, first day I tracked it, he had an ADP of 47. If I go to look at James Harden's ADP on the 18th of September, by the way, I am recording this on the 26th of September, 8 days ago, James Harden's ADP was 45.3. Then the next day it was 42.6. Then the next day it was 40.6. Then the next day it was 38.3. Then the next day 36.5. And then the next day 34. Then the next day 31. Then the next day 29. And now 28. So in 8 days, James Harden's ADP has come in 17 positions. The volume of drafts that they are doing, or the sample they are using, they just must cut out any sample that's not 7 days ago, because that is an outrageous change in ADP. That is an unbelievable switcheroo. I see someone else here who's come in 30 spots in the last 8 days. Who's that guy? Whose ADP has come in? Oh, it's Fred VanVleet, of course, because he had an absolutely nonsense ADP. Still not in a good spot, but it's gone from 96 to 63. But yeah, so that number's going to keep moving for Jim, who averaged 17 points, 5 rebounds, 8.5 assists with a steal last season. He's old. He's 35. But the key things with Harden here are only 21 usage last season. And not only is Paul George gone, not only is Russell Westbrook gone, but now Kawhi Leonard is going to be battling again. He is going to, even though he's not old James Harden, he is going to have to improve on 21 usage. The assist will possibly go up, and the scoring has to go up. And you could even say the rebounding has to go up as well. He has to do more. It is an absolute no-brainer at those positions for Jim to consider him an option. It is one of the easiest decisions you would make in your life. If you're sitting in a draft and James Harden is sitting there in the 20s, you cannot not do that. You have to do it. Have to. The next player that I think is undervalued at the moment is the big fella, Ivica Zubac. Ty Lue has been very, very, very adamant in not giving this guy minutes or not giving this guy big minutes, but there are two reasons why he has to. A, the backup is Mo Bamba, who is categorically bad. Secondly, the reason he didn't do that is he loved going small ball, and the way to be able to really work a small ball lineup is to be able to have Kawhi Leonard and Paul George guarding the perimeter. And you know who the Clippers are going to have guarding the perimeter this season? Not Paul George, and honestly, maybe not Kawhi Leonard. And yeah, Batum and Jones are good at it, but Zubac is, like, without Kawhi, Zubac is the Clippers' second best player. He's ranked at 106 on Yahoo with an ADP of 135 on ESPN, an ESPN category rank, an updated category rank of 160 on ESPN, For points leagues, he's still value on Yahoo, and ESPN's got him ranked at 128 with an ADP of 135. I'm sure that'll come in 55 spots in the next week. But Zubac is a very, very clearly, in my mind, undervalued player at the moment. He's not going to roll out there and score 17, 18 points a game, but he did average 12 points in 26 minutes. He averaged 9 boards with 1.2 blocks on 65 from the field and a pretty good 72 from the line. I really love getting Zubac in like a round 8, probably of a 12-team league, is about the spot where I'd look to him. Like, finally, hopefully we get like 31 minutes. If we get 31 minutes, he probably cracks the top 70. I think if you want to go round 8, he maybe round 7, I would consider it. I think there is some appeal there, and it's almost getting to the stage where there just aren't any other bullets for Ty Lue to fire, that he just has to play Zubac more than 26 minutes. 26 minutes for Zubac last season is an insane number. This guy is unbelievably good in comparison to the role they get him to play, and there is no excuse anymore. We've got another undervalued guy to talk about in a second, but today's episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. Active members, 5 million. That is a lot. You can play PrizePicks against a bunch of celebrities as well. Old mate Drewski's there. Joe Budden. MMA champ Sugar Sean O'Malley. And I actually know who Sugar Sean O'Malley is, even though I'm not an MMA guy. But Sugar Sean is there. He's playing on PrizePicks. And you can do that in the Community Plays tab under the Promos tab on the app and view those entries over there. They've also got, for 1 week left in September, the Caleb Williams special. One Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. You just go in there and you need to just choose between 2 to 6 individual player projections. I choose the Williams over 1 yard passing one and stick that in there, and then you can get your winnings to roll in. Download the PrizePicks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 instantly when you play $5. The code is LOCKEDONNBA on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It is guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. Today's episode is also brought to you by the Game Time app. Tickets. We want to go to events and we want to get tickets, and that's what Game Time brings us. Tickets. Good deals, tickets. They've got so many great features. Their newest one is Game Time Picks, which shows you tickets to live events. But what it does is it cuts out the fluff. It gets rid of the bad options or the not so good options, because everything's good. It's all Game Time. But it gets rid of the bad ones. I said bad again. It shows you the good ones. That's what it does. It cuts the fluff. It brings your time into focus. It's like, I don't have to worry about wasting my time finding these good deals. Game Time just puts them out in front of me. You've got the views from your seat. You've got the all-in pricing, which you can toggle on in the app as well, so that you see the pricing of the ticket all up front, without having to worry about additional fees getting added on later on, which is an unbelievable move. Some may say it's a massive W. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. So let's just fling it back in and have a look at the last player who's on my undervalued list, and that is the aforementioned Kevin Porter Jr., who played some games over in Greece, I believe, last season after he was traded, dumped by the Rockets to the Thunder, who then cut him, and then no NBA team wanted him. Charged by the New York Police Department for some domestic violence incidents, which in the end his partner, who I believe is now Jaylen Brown's partner, said that, no, it didn't actually happen that way. So, I don't know. Who knows what actually happened in that situation? All I know is that they got charged. She was dealing with issues and claimed this stuff at the time, and now they've broken up, and she's with Jaylen Brown. So, who knows? But Kevin Porter had to deal with all that stuff. No charges, no guilty. So maybe he doesn't get suspended. Maybe there is no suspension coming. But I remember hearing Law Murray talk about it, saying he expects a suspension to come. So we'll find out. But Porter, in his past role in Houston, put up big numbers. And there's no denying that. Now, I think the other thing, if you're going to not deny that, which I don't, you have to not deny that Kevin Porter Jr. Was not leading winning basketball. But at the moment, like I said, if Kawhi is out, there is nobody who does anything with the ball or scores. And Kevin Porter Jr. in the past has put up stats. The last time we saw KP 2 years ago, KPJ, he's only 24 now, by the way. He had 34 minutes with 24 usage on that terrible Steven Silas Rockets team, which empowered Porter to be the main guy, which one of the worst decisions you could ever make. He averaged 19, 5, and 6 with 1.4 steals. He had 44 and 78 with over 2.5 threes, or under 2.5 threes. But they're really good numbers. Now, I don't think that Kevin Porter is necessarily going to slide into a starting role. I think it's that lineup that I put at the top. And if Kawhi is out, it's probably Powell that's in there. But Porter could easily get 30 minutes. And while before the confirmation of the Kawhi situation, I wasn't sitting there and targeting Porter as a must-grab guy. I think he's one of those late-round guys that we've just got to see what happens. We don't know how they're going to roll things. They could also decide not to use Kevin Porter and play Chris Dunn as the backup guard. But Porter's ranked 363 on Yahoo, which for category leagues and points leagues is obviously way too low. And his ADP on Fantrax is 264. And these are probably off by the Yahoo one by 200 and the Fantrax one by 100. And upside would suggest that there is a top 100 2% chance outcome for Kevin Porter. And that means you've got to have a look at it. That means you've got to consider using him in the right situation. In terms of overvalued players, is anyone sitting there at the moment on the old Clippers who I think is valued incorrectly? Yeah, it's Kawhi. Now, to be fair, they did not get the confirmation of this knee surgery issue and not being ready for camp. So they weren't necessarily 100% pricing that in. I didn't expect that he was necessarily going to miss camp, but I expected he was going to miss a lot of time, and I knew that there was obviously funny business going on. Kawhi's ranked at 30 on Yahoo. ESPN's category got him ranked at 33. His Fantrax ADP is 28. His Yahoo rank from points is 30. I will not draft Kawhi Leonard in the first round. I will not draft Kawhi Leonard in the second round, and I will not draft Kawhi Leonard in the third round. And if you're in a 12-team format, I'm probably not going to be drafting Kawhi Leonard in the fourth round, with one carve-out. If I am playing in a roto league, I think the fourth round is not bad, but I am not doing it otherwise. Now, this is a man who is a top 10 per game player, and I used to say top 5 that his upside was for this season, but if he's dealing with his knee problem, he is going to deal with some limited minutes in games. So that even drops some of his per game value. He's 33. He played 34 minutes with only 26 usage. That could have topped 30 this season, and it still might. He averaged 24, 6, and 3.5 with 1.6 steals, almost a block, 53 and 89. He does everything. And he would have had to do more of everything this season. But I do worry that with this concern, and maybe this concern is absolutely nothing, but you know who I'm not giving him the benefit of the doubt to? It's Kawhi Leonard. I'm not going to give... Because someone left a comment on one of my videos. What are you talking about, man? This guy's so awesome. This happens every year and there's never a worry with Kawhi. He's going to be fine. You're just sleeping on him. You're a hater, blah, blah. Yeah, all right. Kawhi Leonard's the guy that we trust, yeah? Now, last season, I was all about drafting Kawhi Leonard. I was 100% in on drafting Kawhi Leonard at the spots that he was available. End of the second round. I was in on it 100%. It drove me to success in leagues. But we are in a different situation now. So I just won't do it. I will not take him in the first 3 rounds. And he could still be a top 10 per game guy. But I am seriously worried, and this ties back to the stuff about Paul George I said at the start, is the reason that they didn't want to tie themselves up committing big contracts to Paul George, tie themselves up into second apron situations on this team with that there, and maybe Paul George knew about it as well. It was like, maybe I don't actually want to be here if Kawhi is cooked. Kawhi might not be cooked. This might be the most routine situation of all time. But again, they also told us he was available for the playoffs last year. They said, no, he'll be fine for the playoffs in April. We're going to be 6 months removed from that, and he won't have played a game. And had the Olympics and preseason to do it. So, just, excuse me if I don't think this is a routine situation for Kawhi again. Or the time when he tore his ACL and they thought he might... Dime Dropper from Darian from Locked On Clippers had a real good timeline of this. That after he tore his ACL in those playoffs, which they didn't tell us about, and then they were edging us to say he might come back for the playoffs, which would have been about a 12-month recovery. Okay, that's possible with the ACL. Then that didn't happen. And they were saying, maybe he's going to come in. But Chris Haynes, Kawhi's looking good. He's working out. Remember that? And then the start of that season, 6 months later, after he was supposed to come back, in those playoffs, or had a chance to come back, he wasn't even ready for opening night that time. 18 months removed from a torn ACL. So yeah, we are not drafting. Well, actually, you know what? You do whatever you want. If you want to draft Kawhi Leonard, that is obviously your decision. But my stance on it is I am not doing it. And I, in the past, have done it plenty of times. And I will, every time, I will explain the rationale, and I have here again. and there are just too many lies, too many repeat same injuries with high level of reversion and recurrence for me to have. And what surgery to have? Will they ever tell us? Literally no. They will not tell us. Was it his meniscus torn again with another repair? I don't know, removal? Is he going to be Brandon Roy, unfortunately? I'm not doing it. And I know that I'm belaboring this point, but I am not doing it. The risks, not the risks in the rotation. We're going to do breakout candidates first, actually. And I think there are a couple of names that are somewhat interesting to talk about with this squad. We are a little bit bottom barrel scraping here, but it's two guys who were picked last season, very old second-year players, and it's Jordan Miller and it's Kobe Brown. Miller's the interesting one to me for the one really specific reason. Well, actually, I'll give you two reasons, but one of the specific reasons on Jordan Miller is he plays the same position as Kawhi Leonard. So, yeah, we saw Miller in Summer League drop some absolutely gigantic games, like out of nowhere. Now, his numbers last year would tell us nothing. He played 4 minutes a game. It's like Doc Rivers was back coaching. 1 point, not a single assist, steal, or a block. He just didn't play. But he was really good at Summer League, and he plays the same position as Kawhi. Now, there's Batum there, and there's Jones there, and there's Powell there, and there's Coffey there. And Miller's not young. He's 25, even though he's a second-year player. But there is a chance. There is an opportunity for Jordan Miller here, at least, to step up and people to go, Jordan Miller a player? Maybe. The other name I've got on that list as a potential breakout is someone who doesn't quite play the same position as Kawhi, but he sort of does. And that's Kobe Brown, a guy that was picked in the first round last season. A guy that I don't really think can play the three, sort of pigeonholed to be one position, 6'7" guy, played 9 minutes a game with 2 points. But on times where Kawhi would play at the 4, Batum and Jones are in that mix as well, but maybe they do just want to see what Brown can bring. Now, I think Miller probably is a better bet than what Brown is, despite what their numbers suggest from last season. But these are at least the two names here that we've got to consider because there's just, I don't know who else is going to have a true sort of breakout type campaign. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook. The NFL fans will know that the season has started off, and you can start the NFL season off with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So, in the middle of a game, when you are getting a hunch, you are seeing something develop, and you go, I want to check this out. You go into the app, you can check out the stats, you can check out the play-by-play, all on the same screen where you would place those bets. And as a new customer, you can place a $5 bet, and you get started with a $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place that bet. You don't even have to win it. It is guaranteed. Just place a $5 bet. So go to FanDuel.com right now to get started. And don't forget to gamble responsibly. Okay. So now I believe it's time for us to take a look at some risks in the rotation. And it's relatively straightforward what these risks are going to be. Because Kawhi's injury, that's the thing, isn't it? Like at the moment, I've got to project that Kawhi is going to play a chunk of games. 65, no way. 60, maybe. 50, debatable. And if Kawhi is out, that impacts literally everybody. It will mean James Harden has to do even more. It will mean Norman Powell has to play more minutes and do more. It will mean we need more Kevin Porter and shot creation and usage. We need more. It will mean Amir Coffey or Jordan Miller or Kobe Brown stepping up. It might mean bloody Bones Highland has to play more. It means Terrence Mann has to try and up his usage. That is the biggest what if at the moment in the NBA. One of the other rotation risks is there's a glut of shooting guards. Like James Harden's going to start at point guard, and there's going to be Terrence Mann at the 2, but then there's Norman Powell who's a 2. There's Bones Highland who's like a 1/2. There's Chris Dunn who's like a 1/2. And there's Kevin Porter who's like a 2/1. There's a lot of guys who can fill those minutes. So while Mann will start, like Porter could get those minutes and Powell can get those minutes. They can go Dunn and Harden together. There's a lot of different ways that they can run that rotation. And there's a lot to fill. No George, no Westbrook, maybe no Kawhi. The other thing I want to throw here is that people say, I'm not drafting Harden. And I'm sure someone's already commented this in the chat or in the video, and you'll said it to yourself, or you've told your missus, go, what's this Josh guy talking about, mate? He's saying to draft Harden. There's no way I'm doing that. Why would I do it? Because the Clippers are going to have no Kawhi, so they're going to shut everybody down, and they're going to be bad. Whole-scale shutdowns like that don't happen until you get to the middle to end of March, Utah, Portland style, hence why we finish our leagues at a certain spot. The Clippers don't own their draft pick. It is outright to the Thunder. So there is zero benefit from them shutting down. They will not be like, let's keep James Harden out to give Oklahoma City a shot at Cooper Flag. There's no reason for them to do it. Now, if Harden gets hurt, or does, that's terrible English, if Harden does get hurt, then yeah, like they're not going to be as rushy back on him. But they are not like shutting things down so they can get a shot at Cooper Flag, because they have no shot at getting Cooper Flag. None. Shout out to Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I believe in Joe Henry, but I also believe that it's time for us to get the old magnifying glass out and put Jim Harden under the lens, because this is about James Harden on this team. That's where the value absolutely screams at the top end. It's opening up even further now with Kawhi's injury. So let's have a look. Let's have a look at some of the numbers of James. Now, Harden was still pretty good. Despite all of the issues, the big drop in usage, he was like a fringe second round, third round category league player. His true shooting was still strong. His shot quality was good. His free throw rate was still good, even though all that stuff has dropped off. His load, his creation, all that stuff, his passer rating, they're all super high. Have a look at that graph. It's unbelievable. Despite a down season, and he was still really good. His defensive stuff is still quite poor, and one of the strengths of Harden in the past have been very strong rebounding for a guard and really strong steals. And those two things have dropped off, and I'm not certain that they return. They may not return. But he was able to put up still like really strong numbers in that role, and people just sort of wrote him off because the first few games in the Clippers after his trade, he was bad. That's the other thing. People have got, maybe James Harden will quit and stop playing and demand a trade because of the Kawhi thing. I would say there is no chance of that happening. Again, there is. The reason that Harden in the past has demanded trades has not been, hey, our team is bad in season. That is not what happened in any of those spots. What is interesting is, to me, on that offensive usage chart, which shows the play type, it obviously still a lot of pick and roll ball handling, but there was a lot more spot up stuff from Harden than we'd seen from him in the past. And I don't believe he'll be doing very much spot up stuff at all. So I think that the ISOs and the pick and roll ball handling jumps up, which improves his usage and improves his overall assist rate for this upcoming season, even if the players he's passing to, they may not be the best. The next graph we're looking at here for Jim, on the right-hand side, and you see this, we talk about the decline phase of players. Look at the rim field goal attempts per 100 possessions on Darko for James Harden, and what a absolutely crazy decline. That does have an impact on the way a team plays. It probably impacts assist numbers. It also impacts things like field goal percentage, because they're the easiest shots to take. Once you get there, you just don't have that pop anymore. You can't get to the rim. And that's a real problem. And Harden is old. Yes, that is true. On the left-hand side, the headshot plot, we've got the y-axis saying finishing talent. That is a basketball index metric about how good you are at finishing at the rim. And the x-axis is the volume of passing creation, like how much you're doing and creating for others with your passing, and the percentile. What I've included there is the 2023 and 2024 seasons of a player who has got a similar profile to him in Cade Cunningham, and players who are projected to maybe lead the league in assists in Tyrese Halliburton and Trae Young. You will see Harden in the middle of that graph. The 2023 is the higher one. That is saying that his finishing talent from 23 to 24 dropped. Yes, he got worse, very clearly. But his passing creation volume was still pretty high. It was still pretty high. It was not as high as Trae Young's and was not as high as Tyrese Halliburton's. So it has scope, his passing numbers, to improve even from what he was doing last season, where he turned himself into more of a pass-first player. He actually has scope to do more. The other thing that is interesting is that Trae, Halliburton, and Harden all saw their finishing talent decrease last season. Not really sure what the point of that is, but that's interesting. Cade's the other one who's got a similar game shape to Harden. He was the reverse. He was in the low finishing talent, low passing creation volume in 23, limited games. And then 24, jumped way up to have really strong finishing numbers and an improvement in passing volume. So Cade could continue to get better here. The Halliburton one's a little interesting with his finishing dropping off. I think that's hamstring related, and even Trae Young, who's obviously not as good as finisher as any of these players. But Harden, with that 24 number, is behind Halliburton and Trae in terms of passing creation volume, and there is a real shot that he's able to equal those guys and push higher. In terms of fantasy similarity, the players that he comes out similar to from a shape perspective is Cade, It's Scoot, it's Keontae George, and it's Damian Lillard. No real surprises with those guys, although in the past, Harden was a much better rebounder. These guys are all lower rebounder, high assist players, iffy field goals, pretty good free throws, and that's the same play. We know that Harden is better than all of those guys, but you got like your Lillard who's just behind him and Cade who's just behind him again, and then your later round guys in Scoot and Keontae with that similar sort of overall fantasy shape. And often when we do these fantasy shape graphs and similarity for the under the lens, there's value in finding it for that player, but it's also about some of the other peripheral players like the Cades and Scoots and Keontae Georges, and they've got a shape similar to James Harden. That's somewhat interesting. I think that's part of where we can get some interest out of that. We're going to talk injuries for this team. Not that we haven't already spoken about them completely at length all the way through, but let's just go with a couple of guys here. And the worries that I have obviously are Kawhi and his knee. I have to be worried about it. And the other one is Jim Harden, who was pretty healthy last season, but he's 35. He had a history of hamstring injuries for a year or two before that. And at that age, soft tissue does become somewhat of a concern. So while I'm big on Harden, I worry about the age, I worry about the decreased field goal attempts at the rim, and I worry about hamstring and health and old man recovery. All that stuff I worry about. Now, as usual, we get the shirts off James Harden photo at this time of the year, best shape of his life, and he looks skinny. Like, he looks unbelievably skinny. That's true. But we get this every year. But I still worry about him at that age, with the ability to heal of a body being reduced. Let's talk about the Clippers and their schedule and what that looks like from a fantasy point of view coming up for the year. And they usually get screwed, and they do again. They've only got 47 quality games, which is on the middle to low side. 44 is the lowest. So they're not playing many quality games. As per usual, they have the most back-to-backs in the league. Insane that the league would increase back-to-backs this season in general. Like, did they not watch the season last season? I guess not. They got 15 maximum game weeks. Obviously, the more maximum game weeks you have means the more minimum game weeks you have. And their playoff schedule, this is the only good thing about it, is they play a lot of games in the playoffs. Fantasy playoffs. If you end on March 23rd, it's 4-4-4. Then it's 4-4-3 to end on March 30th. Yahoo default's 4-3-4. And ESPN default is 4-3-4-3. Let's take a look at guys on this squad who qualify for my youth invasion segment, the under 23s on the team. And there are two players who are under 23. Because Jordan Miller and Kobe Brown, who I had in the breakouts, are like 25. These are both players. One of them was drafted in round 2 this season. And another one was signed to a 2-way contract, undrafted out of the Australian NBL. And that's Cam Christie and Trenton Flowers. I thought Christie had an outside shot of being a first-round player. There was also some who thought he was going to go back to school. He's incredibly young. He is, I think, turning 19 in December. He's Max Christie's brother. He's a 6'6 wing. He played 30 minutes as an 18-year-old for Minnesota last season. He averaged 11 points with 2 threes. The overall profile is not great there, but he's incredibly young. I love his shooting, and his shooting volume really makes him translate very, very strongly. The thing about him on this team is that even though things might go sideways and players might get hurt, he plays the same position as Powell and Porter and who else am I missing? Man, not really done, but like plays that same position. But he's an interesting guy, and his dynasty valuation using my Bazemore metric came out as a top 200 guy, which for a second-round player is, I think, pretty interesting. There's just a few things there that should get you marginally intrigued about what he can bring. The other guy is Trenton Flowers, who also, like, I wasn't really expecting his Bazemore to come out as a top 250 guy, but it did. Now, he's on a 2-way contract. He barely played in Australia last season. He was supposed to be the point guard for the 36ers. He's a 6'9" wing. He played 14 minutes a night and averaged 0.6 assists, which is obviously horrible. Couldn't shoot from the field, couldn't shoot from the line, didn't get defensive stats. His numbers stink, like they're terrible. But he is young. He's got size. He's an okay usage player, which does mean some things when we're talking about Bazemore, and that was one of the things I found is that early career usage is a decent, and steals from college, obviously, are some of the things that do make some sense in terms of translating a player across. And Flowers sits there with a decent usage coming out of the NBL, even though he wasn't great at it. But I don't expect that he's going to play much this season, if at all. I'd expect to see more of Christie, and even then, I don't know that we see much of Christie really either. Let's talk about the risk versus reward. Well, the ultimate risk versus reward guy probably in the entire league is Kawhi Leonard, and he is the guy that appears here using my risk reward that doesn't include games played, and it also doesn't include minutes. It's just that a lot of Kawhi's game is built on super strength free throws. It's built on steals and blocks as well, which are really strong for him, but there is an inherent variance in those. So, yeah, he only varied 33 spots, but as a top pick, that's a lot. And 8 fantasy points is quite a bit too. And now we run into the situation of missed games and missing start of the season and low minutes for a period of time, which is going to further impact Kawhi for this season again, putting him very firmly on the I am not touching him in the first 4 rounds discussion. So who's over the hill on this team apart from everybody? Well, we've got 6 guys listed over the age of 29. One of them is Kawhi. One of them is James Harden. We've talked about both of those guys with different feelings for me on both of them. And one guy who is old, that we don't really think of as being old, but it's Norman Powell. Powell is an interesting guy from a perspective of he needs usage and minutes to be a very good fantasy player. And in the past, he hasn't really got that. 26 minutes and 20 usage for 14 points and 2 threes last season was not enough to matter. He had 2.5 rebounds, 1 assist, 0.6 steals. That's useless. But he probably doesn't play 26 this season. He probably plays 30. His usage might go to 24 if Kawhi misses more time than we think. So he's really a little bit of a one-trick pony, Norman Powell, in terms of scoring and hitting threes, and does that with efficiency and shoots the 3-ball really well. But there is a chance that there is real elevated volume for him, especially early on. So I think he is absolutely firmly in the 12-team mix now, Norm, in terms of having a crack and just seeing what happens at the beginning of the season with likely no Kawhi Leonard. We also know that Nick Batum is on this team, and he is old. Nick Batum had a Tom Thibodeau center-esque usage of 9% in Philadelphia. He averaged 5 points, 4 rebounds with 0.8 steals. He's not going to be able to play big minutes consistently, but he's 6'8". He's 38 years of age now. He plays literally the same position as Kawhi, so he could play more minutes, but it doesn't mean that we want to draft him. He'll have moments where he goes over a 5-game period, 2 steals a game, 1.5 blocks, shooting 58% from the field with 3 threes on 70% shooting. He'll do that, and then he'll go completely missing. But he's on this team. He still can provide some minutes, but at that age, it's just unlikely he's going to be able to do much to influence anything for us. The other, one of the other guys on this squad who is an older player is the sign and traded for Chris Dunn. Remember, they used to have Russell Westbrook. I haven't even talked about that. Paul George is gone. But so is Westbrook. That is so much usage. And that is why we take a look at a Norman Powell and why I'm more into Harden and more into Zubac this season. And Chris Dunn's going to have an opportunity. Now, Dunn's not a usage player either. 13% playing for the Jazz last season. He's averaging 5 and 3 with 4 assists and a steal. He's a steals guy. He's worked on his shooting, but he's still not very good at it. He's a bad free throws player. And even if he played 20 minutes, I don't think we'd be interested in using him. He'd probably need 27 or 28, but it's possible. I don't think you'd want him and Harden together because, again, this is nobody to get usage, and I think Porter and Powell will get preference. But Dunn is older, but he's there, and there is a chance here for some minutes for Chris Dunn. One other player that hasn't really fit into any of the specific categories that we've had so far, well, there's a couple of them, actually. The one I really want to focus on here, though, is Terrence Mann, the guy that you hear, we can't trade him for James Harden. The one that there are many people in the fantasy point of view, not many analysts, honestly, but mainly people who play fantasy will go to Terrence Mann. It's time for him because they remember he had a 40-plus point game in the playoffs against Utah. He had 14 usage in 25 minutes last season, but like everybody else, those minutes and that usage will rise. 9, 3, and 1.6. He also was injured a lot last season. His field goal percentage and free throw percentage are really good. He started out horribly with his shooting, but that picked up second half of the season. But he's never really shown to me an ability to do things good for fantasy. He can be good with percentages, and he's never shown an ability to thrive with high usage. But he's going to get a chance to do it more this season. Part of the appeal with Mann was he would run point guard at times, but he would never do that with Dunn, with Highland, with Porter, and with Harden. He just won't do that. So that limits that upside. As I would much rather take Norman Powell with my final pick in a draft than I would take Terrence Mann. Even though Mann is probably going to start and be out there, he's just one of those guys that doesn't really generate stats and doesn't generate fantasy stats in any sort of big volume. The other guy is the player brought in to be the backup center, and this guy is not good. Mo Bamba is not a good player. But this is where we have to understand the differences. Because in fantasy, he can be. If Ivica Zubac gets hurt, and Mo Bamba plays 27 minutes a night, he is a guaranteed must-roster player. If he played 24 minutes a night, he'd be a guaranteed must-roster player because he rebounds, field goals, usually can be okay at free throws, block shots, hit threes at pretty decent numbers. He played 13 minutes a night in Philadelphia as the third-string center. He had moments of outplaying Paul Reed, but he still sucks in the majority. But he is it. There is no other center here on this team. And if we get the nonsense again from Ty Lue of keeping Zubac at 26, and then because his other small ball option was PJ Tucker, who didn't even talk about, he's 40 years old, and he's still around and doesn't want to play for this team. Bumba is going to maybe just get 20 a night. And honestly, if they put Zubac at 26, Bumba might play 22, and that's probably enough for category leagues in 12s, at least to be a stream guy. Still don't think he's good, and this is why I'd want to lean more into Zubac, but we can't ignore that Bumba exists on this squad. And that's the Clippers, man. I'd take Harden in round 1. I would not take Kawhi until the 50s. I would take Zubac probably in the 80s, maybe earlier. I would consider Porter and Powell as last round flyers. Porter more well-rounded game, which is an amazing thing to say. Powell more scoring and probably more secure. Man, probably wouldn't care about until deeper formats. Bumba, maybe, but probably not. But there's a chance. They could be bad, though, this team. That is absolutely true. But they don't have any incentive to tank. They don't have their draft pick. Guys, we are done here. I'd say that it's sad, and it is for Kawhi, because he has been one of my favorite players, but I am absolutely fed up with the lying from everybody involved in this situation. And I think my sadness is gone because I just knew. I didn't know that they were going to come out and say that he had another knee surgery and he wasn't going to be ready for camp. But I also, I guess in some way, knew that there was a problem here. And I knew that there was going to be a problem this season. And he will not play back-to-backs this season, and he will be limited in minutes, and 50 games might be it. I don't know. I am not doing it. You are free to do whatever you like. But that is how I am approaching it. You have seen me in mocks. You can go back and watch my stuff last year. Industry pickup, I picked him at 24 in that league and finished first in the regular season by a long way and got knocked out in the semis, unfortunately, because I think the big fella might have been out in that. Loved that for me and for him. Guys, we're done here. Thank you so much for listening, everyone. See ya.